Welcome back to Bleav in Softball. I'm your host, Jenna, back from Oklahoma City and the Women's College World Series for a couple of weeks. I am still recovering from the greatest show on dirt, but I've gone right into working the summer league that I've mentioned before, and there's no other way I'd rather do it. So however you got here today, whether it was an audio podcast platform like Apple, Spotify, etc., or watching on YouTube, thank you. Subscribe and rate the show wherever you get your pods. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. And yes, there's merch. Click the link in our bio on either of those pages or go to shop.bleav.com to purchase 3 different shirts for covering our bases, safer out, and catch you soon. All right, let's go through today's batting order. First, we'll be covering our bases. I'll share some call-outs from the softball world. Then we'll head into today's interview with Paige Halstead. Y'all might know her as that tall blonde catcher who caught Rachel Garcia when UCLA won the national championship in 2019. She is much more than just that, of course, for many reasons. Also, just did some work with me for D1 softball this past season. So super excited to jump into that. Then we'll end things with the foul tip of the week, where we share tips to help us get better. All right, let's go. Covering our bases. BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in UFC and MMA and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV. Bet online, the game starts here. Summer softball starts here too. As I said, the World Series might be in the books, but Rip It Sports is where you can get your gear anytime. We all know softball gets lit in the summer. I wore my Ringer turfs pretty much the whole time I was in Oklahoma City, and I'm kind of doing the same thing so far this summer and bringing my Rip It backpack with me wherever I go as well. But Rip It has so many different types of gear for all parts of the game, not just footwear, but equipment, apparel, accessories, protective pieces, you name it. And they also have gear for lots of different sports, by the way, not just softball, volleyball, soccer, just general training, because we all know that never really stops. But the best part is their mission to elevate female athletic performance. They understand that women and girls deserve gear specifically tailored to our needs, fitting right, performing well, and meeting our unique standards. Even better news, Rip It is offering an exclusive 15% discount. Just use the code Jenna15 when you shop at ripit.com. That is JENNA15. This is your chance to experience the same quality gear that helps so many women and girls excel. The Women's College World Series is a place where women always excel, and I wanted to share a few more thoughts, especially after the Champs Series. First of all, obviously, the big question or the big theme is thoughts on the four-peat. You know, at the end of the day, it's history, right? They're the only program to ever do it, the Oklahoma Sooners. And now they are not only in that category, but they're also tied for second in all-time national championships with Arizona with 8 titles. 6 of the last 10 years, Oklahoma has taken home that trophy. 7 of the last 11, actually, if you want to be super specific. That is just dynasty behavior. And just in terms of the senior class, it's impressive. I mean, Kinsey Hansen, Nicole May, Riley Boone, Tiari Jennings, and Jada Coleman. 5 players, the core 5 really, who had been there all 4 years and won that national championship every single year that they were able to compete. In some ways, even more impressive too, though, there were some different rosters, particularly in the circle too. You had G. Juarez, for example, Jordy Ball, and then, of course, obviously, Kelly Maxwell. So I give credit to pitching coach Jen Rocha for that as well, because it's not like she had the same formula every time. She made it happen with different batteries throughout that time period as well. Although Kinsey Hansen, of course, a mainstay behind the dish. But their experience also showed, I thought. I actually didn't know this ahead of time, but I was staying at the same hotel as OU. And yes, apparently they did stay in a hotel, at least for part of it, even though Norman is so close to Oklahoma City. And I saw the players at the hotel actually before game 2 of the Champ Series. They were completely relaxed. And I think it just translated to the field. It's one of those things where we have that saying, act like you've been there before. Well, they literally have. So they were just so calm, cool, collected. It just didn't faze them in a really positive way. And I think that, again, translated to the way that they played between the white lines. Also had a chance to interview players and coaches on the field after the game, too, which was incredible. So check out the conversations with the World Series most outstanding player, Kelly Maxwell. I chatted with All-American Alyssa Brito, as well as pitching coach Jen Rocha. Those are all on the D1 Softball social channels. Some high-level highlights as well. Attendance records. It felt like I just kept seeing these left and right. There were multiple new session records starting from the very beginning, starting with session 1, and even just an overall highest session attendance at 12,566. That was just session 2, by the way. Texas and Stanford and Florida and Oklahoma State, and they actually nearly broke that again later in the World Series. But the new champ finals record, 12,324 people attended. Now, I realize that OU is obviously local. Norman's very close to Oklahoma City, and Texas isn't even that far in the grand scheme of the U.S. But the fact that there were only those 2 teams there in terms of fans compared to 8 that start in the beginning, and we still had that many people that showed up, I still find that impressive. And there were 9 sessions in total, and 5 of them were sold out. That's the 3rd highest average session attendance that we've ever seen as well, with 12,200 average per session. So in person, this is why we talk about how just electric this atmosphere is in Oklahoma City every year for the World Series. But obviously the reach goes well beyond just what's actually happening in OKC. The TV ratings as well, just incredible job once again by ESPN. A most watched Women's College World Series finals on record, averaged 2 million. It was the best game 1 ever, 1.9 million. Second best game 2 ever, and a little over 2 million. It peaked at 2.5 million. Overall up 24% year over year. That is incredible. Both Champ Series games are now among the top 10 most watched college softball games of all time. And the World Series up across all 15 games, 2% from last year. And remember, we're like breaking these records every year. So even 2%, still an increase from year to year. And the regional round itself finished up 6% too. The most watched Super since 2021, the most watched Big 12 championship game ever, the most watched regular season since 2015. One of my favorite things outside the numbers, though, is when Caitlin Clark was asked in a press conference with the WNBA if she was watching the NBA Finals. And she said she had actually been watching the Women's College World Series, which was so, so cool. Women supporting women, of course, and also the fact that Tegan Cavan, pitcher for Texas, actually grew up in Caitlin Clark's hometown as well. So just local supporting local as well, which I appreciate. And, now just thinking about the 52nd anniversary of Title IX upon us, it just puts all of these things into even more perspective. Even baseball's event in Omaha is increasingly being called the Men's College World Series because the Women's College World Series has gotten so big, there isn't a default by gender, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, it hasn't stopped. I said it, summer softball. AUX is finishing up in Wichita at Wilkins Stadium. Of course, the Athletes Unlimited Championship season will be in Rosemont. Talked about the AUSL being announced as well in our last episode. Lots of great things coming up, all summer stuff. Other pro teams also are competing, though, right now, too. Florida Vibe, for example, and shout out to Leah Amico, a friend of the show, former guest earlier this season, who's the head coach this year for the Vibe. Then there's also the Chattanooga Steam, the New York Rise, and of course, the OKC Spark, which has Kinsey Hansen, Riley Boone, and Jada Coleman. So 3 out of the core 5 for OU in that senior class that just finished, just kept on going with the Spark just nearby in Oklahoma, and more teams as well. So lots to support in terms of professional softball, which we talked about with Michelle Smith. We definitely want to keep growing, of course, and doing that includes investing in just our time and our effort and our energy. But the World Cup in Italy too coming up July 15th through 20th with 8 teams, 2 groups too: USA, Canada, Italy, China, all in Group A. Japan, Australia, the Netherlands, Puerto Rico, all in Group B. I have to give a shout out to my D1 Softball podcast co-host, as well as just my friend Amanda Lorenz too, because she will be competing for Team USA once again at that World Cup in Italy. And we are just cheering her on, as well as many others who we've had on the show and just in life that I've been able to come across. All of them are doing great things for the sport. And then to bring it home, just some more summer softball stuff at the college level. So yes, I've said it before, but I am now officially underway in doing play-by-play for the Golden Bay Collegiate League broadcasts. It is an extension of that Florida Gulf Coast League, the first year of this summer collegiate league in Southern California. So it's all under the larger American Collegiate League umbrella. And it's very exciting because there are 4 different regions now. Obviously Florida, as well as Scenic City in Tennessee, here, the Golden Bay Collegiate League in Southern California, and then the Lone Star League, which is in Texas. So we're here at Vanguard University in Southern California, Costa Mesa, just next to Irvine. 4 weeks that we're going to be competing here, and you can watch and keep up on Athletes Go Live. That's actually for all the different regions as well, but we are streaming, and I'm, as somebody who took advantage and had a great experience playing summer softball when I was in college, I'm so glad to see these women getting the opportunity to do the same, and even more than we had at my time. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Amanda Lorenz, of course, the D1 Softball podcast, the season finale episode actually just came out too. And it's a look back at the World Series. We actually do get to interview the Tiare Jennings. So you hear it straight from the Sooners' mouth on everything that happened with the Sooners this year, as well as her entire career. But someone else who's active in the softball community and with D1 with me is today's guest. So let's head into the interview. She is a national champion and former catcher at UCLA, gear designer, mentor, coach, and USA and Athletes Unlimited alum, Paige Halstead. Paige, long time no see since I just saw you recently, but this time it's on a computer. It's good to see you.
I know. It's so nice to see you. I know it's been a while.
We obviously just got back from the Women's College World Series, which is great. I'm still recovering a little bit. How are you?
Yes, no, I agree. I think I got some well-needed sleep, but reflecting on all of it, it was just, it was an incredible time and I had so much fun. So I wouldn't change it for the world, for sure.
Yeah, it's like that good tired that I think, like when we played, we had sort of where you're like, I'm exhausted, but it was worth it at the end of the day,
Yeah, exactly.
But I know that we talked a lot about too when we were actually on site in Oklahoma City, like it was the first time that you had been back at that field and in that place since you won the national championship with UCLA in 2019. So your first impression when you did set foot back at that stadium?
Crazy. I think it's just it's a whole new perspective. And it was very emotional, honestly, because I remember the exact moment when we won and where we were on the field and how it felt. And I think stepping into that stadium, you don't really realize how big of a stadium it is when you're playing on the field. And then, being from like a fan perspective or a D1 softball perspective, it was like, you just don't realize all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes and like the media and how much people prepare for this whole entire tournament. But yeah, I think it was very emotional for me. And I remember calling my parents. I'm like, this is crazy. How did we play in this environment and like, actually win the national championship? Because you put in so much work and, you don't really realize it at the time when you're playing. But it's a really big accomplishment. So yeah, it was a crazy different perspective that I think I needed to see and, kind of understand like how big of a thing it really is and how much it means to, the little girls in the stands watching. And sometimes you don't realize how much of an impact you have on them. And kind of watching, all the fans watch OU in Texas. It's just such a great thing to see and, realize and you can relate too. It's like you don't really realize an impact that you have until you see it firsthand. So yeah, that was awesome for sure. Very emotional.
Well, yeah, how could it not be, right? Especially being in the same place. Like you said, I remember us being on the field before the second Champ Series game, which ended up being the national championship game with
Yeah.
OU in Texas, and you were pointing in between first and second base. Like, yep,
Hmm.
that's where we all were celebrating, when I was here five
Yeah.
years ago. Like that is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. And it's crazy how much I remember that moment too, and I mean, seeing OU win it, it was like it brought back all of those memories, and it made me just so emotional for them, and seeing their parents cry on the field and the players cry, it's like, it brings back all these amazing emotions, and it makes you realize how much softball has shaped your life, to get to that moment, and for OU to four-peat, it was like, crazy emotions and just so amazing to see. So yeah, it was a big moment, but I think, being there with you in softball was a great experience, and, I had so much fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that, obviously. Since we spent so much time together, right? I'm glad to hear that it was fun. But also, it's just really, I think, cool for these full circle moments. We talked about that a lot too, I think, throughout our trip, really. But the
Yeah.
fact that not only like did you understand what the celebrations were like, but even the feelings, the thought process leading up to that, because
Yes.
I know we talked to a lot of players and coaches and things afterwards too. And
Mhm.
they talked a lot about, like, yeah, this moment, it took a lot to get to this moment. It's not like this just
Yeah.
magically happened with rainbows and butterflies. So, from your experience, that whole process of the emotions going into the
Yeah.
World Series and into that day.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that's huge, right? The process, and I think for me personally, my senior year, it was like we got to the World Series every single year, so freshman through senior, and I think my junior year, I was like, dang it, we were so close, and I think my class, we felt all those emotions leading up until our senior year, so I think once we finally got there in 2019, I was like, okay, this has to be our time, and I think all the emotions from my teammates, we were just all like on the same page, and we're like, okay, this is our last year, like we have to do it and end it with a bang. But yeah, I mean, all the emotions leading up to such a big, obviously national championship stage, it's kind of like, okay, you have to stay focused, and that's what we were talking to the athletes too. It's like it's so interesting hearing how they stay focused on the field with a huge crowd, and obviously OU having most of the fans. It's like it's just incredible to see how many people come out and support Oklahoma softball, and softball in general. So you know it is hard to have emotional intelligence on that stage. But my senior year, I think our team was just so locked in that we were like, okay, it's either we're winning or we're not. And like, it was just, we had to do it our senior year, and it was a great experience. And, talking to all the athletes, it's like, it brings back memories of the process too, for sure. So,
Yeah. You were all on the same page. I see what you did there.
yeah, no pun
Nice.
intended.
Pun intended. Own it. But also, you said it too. You played OU, so you know what that experience is like when it's like, yes, of course they have fans that show up. It's in Oklahoma, right? Like it's not a surprise. So when you won, or even just throughout the process when you played in the World Series, seeing the Bruin bubble, because they show up, by the way, always. That
They do.
Bruin blue is always in that sea of crimson,
Yeah.
But seeing that part of
Mhm.
it, how did that affect your experience?
Yeah, I think it kind of fueled us, having seeing our little section in a sea of red, pretty much. I think our team, we were just so grateful and so just happy that they came out and supported us, and it was just awesome to see the energy that they brought. And we would walk out when we were about to go to the game. We'd walk out, and the Bruins did it this year too. Walk out of the hotel into the bus, and you have your whole entire fan section there supporting you, and it gets crazy, but it's a good crazy and it's a good energy. So I think when we were playing Oklahoma, our mission was just, keep looking up at our fan section, because sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming with all the Oklahoma fans, and, every strikeout, they're just cheering like it's the end of the game. And it's kind of like you have to stay focused and, show the support that your fan section gave to you. And yeah, to us, it just kind of like fueled us, and we didn't want to let them down, pretty much. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, even Texas, when we were there, Oklahoma and Texas, like they had their little fan section, and it's awesome to see them come out and just show support no matter what. So it can get crazy for sure, but I think we were just tunnel visioned on our fan section, and we were like, okay, we can't let them down. Let's do it.
That's the way to do it. You're so right. It's like an extension of your team,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. 'Cause it's family, it's
Yeah.
the Bruin bubble, and same thing with Oklahoma. It's their, Sooner magic, just like Bruin magic. So, yeah, it's always good to show support and just be thankful that they're there. And Oklahoma City is far from LA, so they took a trip to get there.
Very true. Very true. Gratitude always a good place to lead from, for sure.
Yeah.
Another cool part though was just seeing you get to see Rachel Garcia, your pitcher, from that national championship and just throughout your time at UCLA in general too. It
Yeah.
was nice to see, like, just as somebody who got to witness it, who just said hello and like you guys went and hung out and did your thing, right? Because you're friends too, not just like teammates from that time.
Right.
But what was that experience like, seeing her in that place that you guys did that?
Yeah, it's awesome. Rachel's just an awesome person, and you're right. Like we're friends for life, and that's what college softball does. You get friends for life, and yeah, seeing her back at the OKC stage again, it brings back those emotions. Kind of for us, Rachel and I, we were just always locked in every single game because we knew what we wanted to do, and we knew we came here for a reason, and it just brought back all those emotions and how much work we put into each game. And like I think I was telling you, between each inning at the World Series, Rachel, me, and Coach Lisa would go into the dugout in like a secluded area, and we'd be like, okay, what are we going to throw these next three batters? Like, what's our game plan? But that was like a consistent every single mid inning type of a thing. So there was just a lot of hard work that was put into each game. And I'm obviously grateful I got to spend it with Rachel and that 2019 team. It was just an amazing experience, and Rachel and I are going to be friends for life. And she's just a great person, and I'm so happy that she got to win it in 2019 too. So it's awesome. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, and Coach Lisa, I mean, I think everyone knows who you're talking about, but for those who don't, yes, that is Lisa Fernandez, the GOAT that she is referring to, just in case if you're new here.
Yes, and Coach Lisa, I mean, I grew so close to her because she's such a player's coach, and she really wanted the best for us, no matter what happened. And she was always our biggest support system, and with me and Rachel and just everybody on the team. So I'm just so grateful that we got to win it for her too, and all the coaching staff, pretty much. So yeah.
It was a big moment for a lot of reasons as well. Like, obviously, your team and all the hard work that you all put in.
Mhm.
But it had been 9 years since the last Pac 12 national championship at that time, which was also UCLA in 2010.
Right.
I remember playing against that team that year. So
Oh,
I
really?
remember it vividly, going up against Megan Langenfeld. Um, but, for a conference that has, the majority, even to this day, of the national championships, but it had been a while, right? And so I
Yeah.
remember at the time thinking about how, like, oh, the drought's over, the pack is
Yeah.
back. It's been OU ever since then, basically. But it was a big moment, I think, for a few different groups, even beyond just UCLA.
Yeah, 100%. And, with Pac-12 kind of dispersing, it makes it a little bit more emotional, which is, there's just so much history in the Pac, I feel like. And it's sad to see it go, but I think, softball's going to continue to grow no matter what. But yeah, it honestly hurt my heart a little bit to hear that the Pac is, not going to be there anymore. But what are your thoughts on that?
I'm similar, like it's so much history, particularly in softball. Like, it is the Conference of Champions, not
Yeah.
to toot our own horns, but to toot our own horns.
Yeah.
Stanford and UCLA have the most national championships across the board of any athletic departments in the
Right.
country. Like, it's the
Right.
top two. They're in the Pac 12 historically. Now it's changing.
Yeah.
Um, but with softball in particular, even more so. So
Yeah.
I think for our community, yeah, it hurts. I mean, we have to adjust just like anything else.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
like, that's what we do as athletes,
Yeah.
and as a community. But yeah, it's like, I'm glad that it got its moment, even though unfortunately Stanford and UCLA had to play each other at the World Series. At least, there was that last sort of pack
Yeah.
on pack experience.
Yeah, and I thought Stanford did so good though. I think they had a great season, and obviously Nija is just amazing, and she's, going to go down in history 100%, but I'm so impressed with Stanford and how far they made it. And I've always, they've always had such a great program. So it was awesome to see them there at the World Series too, you know. So,
Yeah, I think I'm really happy it felt poetic and only right that UCLA was there also, given that it's like the most national championships in softball. It just felt like this is how it should be for like the swan song for the pack. And what that team in particular was able to do this season with all the adversity they faced. I know you and I have talked about this a lot, but it was really, I'm very proud of that last representation for the pack for both teams.
yes, I agree 100%. And yeah, going back to the adversity that UCLA's faced, it's crazy to see them at the World Series stage and just to get as far as they did. And it shows how much like team culture they have, and how much they're for one another. And I think it was just awesome to see again, like the last Pac-12 teams at the World Series. It was pretty cool to see. So,
Yeah. And so many awesome batteries. Like we're talking about you and Rachel, for example, right?
mhm.
A lot of great catchers also. Charlize Palacios comes to
Yeah,
mind, of course. Ali Kaneshiro, like we obviously have talked about Nija, but her battery mate. And really across the board, every team that made it to the World Series had an awesome catcher
yeah,
behind them, which makes sense, right? That's such an important position.
right.
But to see those relationships unfold too, that
Mhm.
must have been, I would imagine, from your perspective, like really special.
Oh yeah, 100%. And like you said, there's so many great batteries that made it to the World Series. And I think I had my eye on Reese Atwood from Texas, and I for some reason I thought she was a senior, but she's a sophomore, and I was like, this girl's presence is like a senior on the field, and obviously in the batter's box she's incredible. But to see her perform as a catcher and the presence that she had behind the plate, it was amazing to see. And again, it brings back emotions when I was on the field playing, and it's just so awesome to see. Obviously I'm biased because I was a catcher, but it makes me so happy to see amazing catchers and how they communicate with their pitchers and whole entire team, because you're the quarterback out there, and it's just awesome to see. And yeah, I think I'm gonna have my eye on Reese because she's gonna keep getting better, and she's only a sophomore, so it blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, this girl's already amazing. How much better can she get? So yeah, no, like you were saying, it was awesome to see the talent there. And it's just going to continue to grow. And I think Texas is going to be really, really good next year. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do. So
Oh yeah. I feel like every year we say, I don't know how it could get any better or any more competitive or like how in the world can we top this? And somehow
Mhm.
they find a way. So we'll see how next year, I guess.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. But and you said it too, like the little girls, I think, are kind of everyone's favorite, really, if you ask them, especially the people who have been in those shoes as an athlete. But
Hmm.
I remember when we worked together at Mary Nutter with doing softball, and then also obviously at the World Series too, like there are little girls coming up to you as well. And you still are active, especially in the catching community. So for those who don't know, maybe some background on everything that you still do now as well as a part of the game.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Obviously I'm working with D1. So I get to go to some amazing tournaments and, interview athletes and fans. But outside of that, I also have my own line of catching gear with All Star. And All Star is very well known in the baseball space. And so they came to me about 3 years ago, and wanted me to have my own line on the fast pitch side because they're trying to grow it. And 3 years ago, I said yes, and we designed it and tested it, and it's finally out on the market, which is super cool. And it's just such a surreal feeling to, see little girls wear my gear. And, it's like a dream to me. So, just trying to stay active in the catching community and doing as much as I can to grow the sport on our side. And other than that, I do clinics in Southern California, and yeah, there's three pretty big things that I'm just trying to grow softball and do the best that I can. And again, I'm grateful for all the opportunities that D1 gives me and All Star, and still staying active in the catching clinics and lessons and things like that. It's such a, it's not like a job for me. It's something that, I dream about every day, and I'm like, okay, I actually get to do a dream job. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do right now.
It's so cool to see. I just, one of my favorite things ever is when athletes pay it forward, just because we were those little girls, right? So, like, whenever I
Yeah,
see that unfolding with any athlete, because I feel like most softball players, they find a way to stay connected some way, somehow, just depends on exactly what they choose to do, but
yeah,
somehow they're going to stay connected, right? So I just like that you've
yeah,
taken this path. But
yeah.
can you tell me even more about the process with All Star? Because you said it 3 years ago, it's finally on the market. Like,
Yes.
this was not something you just came up with, right? There was a lot of thought that went into this.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so just some more information. Basically, it took us 3 years, 2.5 years to actually design the fast pitch product. And some background on All Star, they were specifically baseball. And so I went into this partnership saying, okay, let's do what you're doing on the baseball side, because it's obviously amazing quality. You have MLB athletes wearing it, which to me is like, okay, why isn't it in softball? Why aren't we getting this quality, this amazing quality for softball players? So we kind of took that idea. Okay, what do they have? They have the foam, memory foam padding. They have all the adjustments. Okay, how are we gonna, form fit this to a woman's body? And so that's why it took so long, because we didn't just translate what baseball has and just copy and paste it on the softball side. It's like, okay, how are the cuts going to be different? How is it going to mold to a female's body? How is it going to move? And we really took all of the great features they had in baseball and then try to input it into the softball side. So that's why it took like 2.5, 3 years to create and design. And obviously, we tested it on great collegiate catchers. We got their feedback on it, and I tested it out. And so we had a lot of support and effort on that side, just to kind of make it the best that it could be. And I'm so grateful to be with All Star, because it's not like, um, from my own experience, sometimes the bigger brands, you don't really have that much say. But with All Star, it's such a family based company, and it's like you're part of the family when you're with them, and they listen to you and they let you have input. And, I was along with them for the whole entire process, and it truly feels like, okay, this is my gear and this is All Star's gear. So it was a true collaboration. And again, I'm so grateful for them to take a chance on me. And so far it's doing really well, and I'm really happy. And again, it's like whenever I see little girls in my gear, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. It doesn't feel real sometimes. But we really put a lot of effort into it, and I'm just thankful that the girls are liking it, and it's actually benefiting them, because from my experience, it was really hard to find any catcher's gear that actually felt comfortable on my body, because I'm so tall. And yeah, it wasn't the best experience that I had. So again, going into my gear, I really wanted it to feel comfortable, and the girls were protected. And it's just something, just I just wanted it to be a different experience, and really benefit them and make sure that they're protected, and they actually feel like they can move in their gear, which is really important as a catcher, especially at the elite levels. So yeah, it's been a great journey, and we're going to continue to grow, and I'm doing my best that I can to help the softball community. And with All Star, it's been a dream. So yeah.
Seeing it in the wild with young girls must be super special, but you've also seen it in the wild at those elite levels too, right? I think I saw you posted something at one point too, because there's the baseball side, of course, but then
Yes.
softball side of things. That must be
Yeah.
really rewarding.
It is in Georgia. So Georgia softball wears the PHX gear, and when we saw them at the SEC tournament, it was awesome, because they came up to me and they're like, "Hey, like, we love the gear," and the coach was like, "Hey, we love the gear," and I was like, "This is awesome! This is so good to hear. I'm so happy." And then actually, I posted something. So the catcher for the Angels, he's wearing our specific fast pitch, like PHX style chest protector. So for it to be in both like elite college athletics, and then also be on the MLB side, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like this just, it validates of what we, the design and how much we tested it and all of that to go into D1 softball and then also like on the MLB side. So that was something really cool because I was with my boyfriend at the Angels game and I was like, no way is that the PHX because he was wearing All Star and I was like, is that the PHX chest protector? And he was like, I think it is because we have like the back of the harness is like it's called a Delta Flex harness, so it's like mesh, and I want it to be more of like a sports bra type of a feel.
Hmm.
So he like turned around, I saw it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So it's a really surreal feeling to have it in both sides, and I just want to continue to grow it. So that was exciting for sure.
Yeah. Go Angels. I'm an Angels fan.
Okay, so
So
Angels.
only adds to my fandom to know that they're wearing your gear too.
Okay. Good. That's a good.
So it's super exciting, right? And like you're saying, the impact is the biggest reason. But why do you think you chose catching specifically in the first place?
Um, yeah, it's a tough question because I was actually recruited at UCLA for shortstop and middle infield. And so I was catching at the time, but I wasn't like specifically just a catcher. And I always loved the action. I always loved communicating with my pitcher, but I was mainly like middle infield. And going into UCLA, I was like, okay, I'm gonna compete for either second base, shortstop, or outfield. And catcher wasn't really, I didn't think that they needed a catcher at the time. So my freshman year, I went in there and the coaches were like, hey, like we're gonna need you to catch full time. And I was like, I got you. Anything that you need, I just want to play. And so from my freshman year, I really started to take it seriously in college. And I just, continued to practice and I was catching bullpens and I was doing as much as I can to, help my team. But I really, it's crazy to answer this question because people think that I like started as a catcher when I was like 10 and just like continued to play that my whole entire life. But it was mainly like middle infield, outfield, catcher sometimes. And I really, I didn't full time start catching until my freshman year in college. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be a catcher and I want to be a catcher, because of all the great things that come with the position. And as a catcher, you really have to have a servant heart. And that to me, like, I loved catching bullpens. I loved helping the pitchers and the action and throwing people out. That was like, one of my favorite parts. And yeah, I wouldn't take it back. And I think it was, the best time that I had in college. And I love the catching position. So I want to do everything I can to help catchers and feel comfortable in their gear. So yeah.
Well, what's cool about that, in addition to many other things, but is also, yeah, you're 6 feet tall, right? And that's not always the case with catchers or
Right.
middle infielders, like some of the other positions that you mentioned. And we're
Mhm.
seeing more and more of just different body types and just styles of play, even at different positions.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's really cool. Like, we've seen lefties behind the plate now as well. And those are some exciting things I think for young girls to see too, because it's like, oh, maybe I'm not limited in what my
Yeah.
options are.
100%. Yeah, and I think, Jocelyn Erickson, right, the
Yep.
kid from Florida, she's a lefty, and I think it's so yeah, just like you said, it's awesome for little girls to see that because sometimes you do have coaches when you're growing up and you're playing and they're like, "Okay, you're lefty, don't play catcher," or "Don't play first base," or, there's sometimes there are like limiting beliefs, but for girls to see that and see it at the collegiate stage, it just kind of has to open their mindsets. And I truly believe that you can play any position, no matter you're a lefty or a righty. It's just to me like there shouldn't be any limiting beliefs, and I think it's awesome for even like Jocelyn to be at that stage. And there's probably so many girls that look up to her and lefty catchers that see her and like, okay, like I can do this. So yeah, it's awesome. Again, like you don't know the impact that you have sometimes on little girls, and it's awesome to see for sure.
SEC Player of the Year right there too.
There we
Jocelyn
go.
Erickson, killing it,
Killing the game.
killing the game. And I know that we've talked about this throughout our whole conversation so far, but when it comes down to it, what do you think the main reason is that, for example, on your website, see, I'm known to do the digging like this. I've had people be like, wow, you really do your homework, including Coach Lisa. Actually, I was like, I swear I'm not a stalker. I just do my research.
Hey, that's
Um,
good. That's good.
But I know you too, so this it's not as weird anyway.
Yeah.
But you had said that your goal is to help girls, quote, reach your athletic and personal potential.
Yes. That is
Why?
right.
Yeah. Why is that something that motivates you so much?
Because this is a great question, by the way. I think, yeah, growing up, I was very tall and I played shortstop. And I did have a couple of coaches throughout my career telling me not to play shortstop and telling me not to play second base because of how tall I was. Um, and it seemed like they were just trying to tear me down in a way. And I always believed in myself. And I think, sometimes when you're a little girl and you have coaches that say certain things, it's hard to truly believe in yourself and have that confidence. And I did struggle with my confidence throughout pretty much my whole softball career until my senior year in college. I think that was the only year that I was like, okay, like I can do this.
Yeah.
So firsthand from my own experience, it was really hard for me with my confidence. And so I think I'm just trying to take my experience and, I wish I would have done it differently. And, I mean, you can relate to this too. It's a game of failure. So sometimes you can doubt yourself and second guess yourself. And it's hard. The mental game is very hard in our softball careers. But I think that's my motivation. That's why I want to help, the younger generation of softball truly believe in themselves and understand that it's just a game. I'm sure that you said that too, where, sometimes in the hard moments, it's like, okay, it's just a game, but sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think my main motivation is just to help, the younger generation with their mental game and, help them with their confidence and again, reach their, potential physically. And I grew up in a gym. So my family has always owned a gym throughout my softball career. So I was always in there lifting weights, and that's definitely one of my passions. And so I try to, translate what I went through to some of my softball athletes that I have and, help them physically, but also really help them with the mental game and, with their confidence and stuff. So my main motivation is just, my personal experience of what I went through. And hopefully I can just help one softball athlete out there with their confidence. And, I would feel good. So
That's really well said, because I know we talk about a lot, sort of in just women's sports in general, like, well, what's your why?
yeah,
And to help just elevate young girls and young women, no one's going to disagree with that why, right? It's a great why. But
yeah,
it's like, why is that your why? Where did that sort of like passion come from? And that's why I think it's so
right.
interesting to hear like your individual story, because we all have our own individual story.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think, again, you can relate to this, whatever personal experience that we've gone through with our softball careers. I think, it's important to educate the younger generation and, help them in any way that we can. And again, the mental game is something that it's getting talked about a lot more in our sport. But I think it's always, always great to work on that because it is, for me at least, it was like 99% of softball. So it's something that I always have a passion and, talking with them and making sure they're okay and, just helping with their confidence because, it is a game of failure. So it's really, really important to have that and believe in yourself and, it definitely changes the game. So,
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. My senior year was the year that I finally like let go in all the best ways too. I know
yeah.
exactly kind of what you're referring to.
Yeah.
And the results ended up being the best. And it's not because you're result focused, it's because you've actually let go of a lot of expectations. It's kind of ironic in that way,
Yeah.
actually. You end up winning a national title, right? Like that year.
Right.
But it's sometimes you wonder, like, well, what if I had just been more myself that way every year, not just senior year, right? And so I can relate to that idea of wanting to really help instill that in young girls as soon as possible,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's the best way
100%.
to play. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I think back, I'm like, "Okay, how did I get to that mindset?" And I don't know, and I would love to hear your point of view too, but my senior year, I was kinda like, "Okay, I'm just gonna do what I can do, and I'm not gonna try to control the outcome," and, because I find myself when I try to control the outcome, I'm just not as confident, I don't feel good about myself, so I just kind of let everything go, like you said, and just tried to actually enjoy the sport that we play. And, because it is a game, it's supposed to be fun. And so I think I just tried to have more fun that year and, enjoy my teammates, enjoy the little moments. Even if I got out, it was like, okay, how am I going to support the next person up at the plate, So I really try to switch my mindset there. And again, like I let go of the expectations. I felt the best that I ever have my senior year. So how did you get to that mindset? 'Cause I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it was very similar. Like the way you're describing it is very similar. There's this element of like, well, this is it. It's your
Yeah,
last year. So I
yeah,
might as well go out like me, right? And that doesn't mean that oh, like I'm just going to do everything myself and I'm not trying to like evolve and get better. It's the best version of you, of course, that you're striving for. But you're
yes,
just not trying to be something that you're not, or you're not trying to, like you said, controlling the outcomes was like a huge piece of it
yeah,
for me. And it's like you really do have to trust the process.
yeah,
And it sounds so cliche and things, but when you actually put that into practice, I mean, it made the world of difference for me. And it was way more fun,
right.
like not being worried about every little thing and just playing free, which is the way that everyone describes it now when we talk to these athletes.
Yeah,
Anytime they say that, I'm like, oh, man, I know what you mean. I wish I would have done that all 4 years in college, not just my senior year, but
I know.
very similar to what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, senior year is a different feeling for sure, but again, just trying to take what I've learned there and, translate it to the younger community of softball. So, do my
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. Yeah. You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. And even translating that too, like we talked about, because obviously some athletes unlimited athletes were there as well at the World Series. We went to the press conference with some announcements they had.
Mhm.
Um, and you played your sort of rookie season is when Kat Osterman, for example, was at the end of her pro career. And so we
Yeah.
chatted with her a little bit as well.
Mhm.
But kind of translating that thought process to even other levels, not just AU, but also USA too, which I know you have some experience with. How
Yeah.
did that play into how your career evolved?
Yeah, I think, first of all, playing professional softball was like a dream for me. I did take a break after college and I missed it so much. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to play and play as long as I can. And Athletes Unlimited was their first season. It was my rookie season during COVID, which was, a little bit different. But being there in the environment and the atmosphere was incredible, and all the girls were amazing. And I think what they're doing for softball is obviously just amazing, and it's awesome to see it grow, especially with their recent announcement. It was, made me want to go back and play again. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that, but
You heard it here. She's coming out of retirement, everyone. No, I'm just kidding.
I wish. But yeah, it's, being there and playing professional softball was, it was always a dream for mine, and getting to play with that, amazing Athletes Unlimited group and what they do. And it was awesome. And I think I felt the most free there. And I definitely had the most fun because it is a different environment. And, it was a point system when I was playing. So it was definitely like a different type of play. Being a catcher, you are such a team player, and then you go into something like that, and it's like, oh, I have to earn my own points, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know if I can relate to that. So that was definitely a switch up for me, but I think it made it a lot more interesting, and girls did play more as a team too, where it was just such a fun experience. And I think what they're doing now with an actual season and then the championship season is incredible. And I think a lot of girls are going to be excited. And I think it's a great opportunity for softball in general. And I love what they're doing for the game. So
Yeah.
yeah, professional was a lot of fun though. So
The AUSL with their like traditional format that they announced does sound really exciting. I mean, because if you think about it, your rookie season, it's also AU's rookie season for anything. That was the first sport they did with softball too. During COVID, it's like
mhm.
the first time they're putting the point system and all of these things into practice. There are so many new things at once. And
Yes.
now fast forward like several years later, and it's evolved more and more, and seems like
Yeah.
it's only going to continue to grow. But it took people like you betting on it, right, to actually participate early on. And it was the
Right.
only softball we really got after COVID hit in 2020. So for me, like I was just grateful that we had any softball on TV.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. I think that that first group of girls, we were betting on it, and it was, I wouldn't say it was a risk so much. I was actually so excited because I knew, most of the girls that were going in to play, and to me, it's like another family. It's a game of softball, and I think it was such a great opportunity. And again, like seeing it grow just makes me so happy. So and you see a lot of returning athletes too, which tells you a lot about what they're doing, the type of people that they are, and how much they pay attention to supporting the athletes, which is something that's huge for professional sports in general. So yeah, it's awesome to see it grow, and I'm excited for the future of AUSL. So
It should be great. And obviously Rachel Garcia, you'll be cheering her on, I'm sure, since
yep,
she's been a mainstay in Athletes Unlimited,
yep,
among plenty of others and other Bruins too. So
yeah,
I know we'll both be watching closely.
100%. I know. It's exciting.
We were also in headquarters for USA Softball.
Yes,
I think you and I had talked about like, man, I hadn't been in that museum, for example, that's at the actual Hall of Fame right
yeah,
near the stadium
yeah.
in years, in a really long time. And you
Mhm.
have been able to wear red, white, and blue, have USA on your chest before. So
Yeah.
being back in that environment, what were those emotions like?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think, as a little girl, I always wanted to play for the Olympic team and, have USA across my chest, and, I was grateful and thankful enough to do it for 3 years. And yeah, being back there, I mean, I remember us having 2 days, at that at the OKC stadium. We'd practice in the morning and then break and practice at night, and then we'd always be in that Hall of Fame stadium and or in that museum, and I was just like, being back there, it made me realize what I accomplished and what that USA team really accomplished. And again, like, you don't realize what you're doing in the moment and how big of a thing it really is until, you're on the other side of it. So,
Yeah.
again, it brought back great emotions, and seeing all the USA employees and Craig, and it was, I haven't seen them since I was a kid, pretty much like in college. So for them to see me, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you've grown up," and I'm like, "Yeah, I think I did." So
Still 6 feet, but
yeah.
yes.
Yes, yeah, no, but it was, it's incredible, and, it's such an incredible honor that I will, always remember to this day. And again, I'm so grateful and thankful to say that I could play 3 years with USA, and it was the most I've ever learned and the best time that I've ever had playing softball. So I'm forever thankful for them for the opportunity.
Well, those are big words for sure. That's a big
Yeah.
statement in a good way. It's so cool about the World Series too, how all of these softball worlds just collide into one. I found myself asking like every athlete that I spoke with,
Mhm.
or coach or whoever, how that was for them. Just
Yeah,
because it's like, yeah, USA softball, pro softball, and then of course it's the Women's College World Series, so college softball is on full display,
yeah,
and it's such a special time. Like there's nothing quite like being there in person,
yeah,
whether you're
exactly.
playing or not, as you now know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and that's the thing is I didn't realize how much goes on behind the scenes to support the World Series, and that's what makes softball so special to me is that everybody comes together to support something huge, and that's something that's so great about the sport too. You just have such a great community and such great people come together, and even the announcers, Jessica Mendoza, and Kat Osterman and Natasha were there, and it was like, these are amazing, amazing athletes, but even better people that come there and support and continue to grow the game of softball, which is really important for our sport. And it was awesome to see 100%. So
Yeah. Well, I
crazy.
mean, that's a really great note, for us to transition, just because, or else we could do this all day. I think you and I know that. But um, I think that's very well said. And I do. I do play a game with everybody who comes on the show. It's called Safer Out. So
Okay,
yes, Coach Lisa even did this, and
really.
Kelly
Oh
I think
wow.
Rachel did it too when she came on. Like pretty much everyone's done it.
Okay.
So Now it's your turn.
I'm nervous. Should I
It's
be?
not a big deal. I know I'm building it up. But basically, like, I'll just bring up a topic. If you like it or you agree with it, you call it safe. If you
Okay.
don't like it or you don't agree with it, you call it out. So you're the
Okay.
umpire.
How many questions do we have?
3.
Okay. All right.
No
So,
one's ever asked me that before, though. That's good. Yeah, you're like, I'm in the zone. I'm trying to prep.
I'm locked in. All right. Let's do it.
Okay, the first one. Have to ask you this:
Okay.
the obstruction rule.
I knew it.
Had to. Safe
Um,
route.
safe. Well, gosh, safe because I guess it just depends on the play. It depends.
Mm.
It depends. Wait, can I change it? Can I go out? Can I
You
say out?
can, yeah, yeah.
I'm
We
gonna
can
go
do
out.
a review.
I'm gonna go out because I feel like again, like it's where the throw takes the catcher, and I think I don't know, there's just so many different situations. Obviously, I want everybody to be safe. I don't want anybody to get hurt, but I think, sometimes it's such a controversial call sometimes because it's hard to see where the throw takes the catcher or, it's a hard call. So I'm gonna go out.
Yeah. It's so subjective. I think that's the part that's hard because I don't know if the rule, like, safety is great, like you said.
Yeah.
Um, but the enforcement of the rule, it's hard for it to be consistent
Yeah.
because it's so subjective in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to tell everyone the story that you told me as well, because you have a little something to do with this obstruction rule.
I know, which is so embarrassing. Okay, so the background in the story, I keep saying sophomore or junior year. I forget what year, but I was with UCLA at the World Series. We were playing LSU, and I was catching, and there was a play at the plates, and it was like one of LSU's fastest runners. So I was like, I know this girl's gonna go home. I'm gonna have to be ready, be prepared. And so there was a base hit to right field. Zoe Shaw was our right fielder at the time. Threw a bullet. It was like the perfect throw to me, and I caught it, but the throw led me into the runner, and so it was such like a controversial call again, and umpires had to meet, and obviously I tagged her out, but everybody's like, oh no, she's safe. It was obstruction, and so there was a whole meeting about it on the field. My coach, Coach I, would like come to my rescue. She was standing up for me. She's like, no, that's not obstruction. And I was just like on the field, like, what do I do? I
Yeah.
can't do anything. We're at the World Series. Like, this is so embarrassing. This is so crazy. And so from that call, there, like, even after the World Series, I told you I saw myself on like Instagram and ESPN, and they're like replaying it. I was like, please don't replay it because it's like it's in my mind. I lived it. I don't want to live it again. But they're like, is this obstruction? Is it not? And I remember Jessica Mendoza, she was like, no, it's not obstruction. I think she did a good job. And I was like, yes, thank you, Jess. So it was such a crazy call. But from that play, they changed the obstruction rule. So technically, I'm historic.
Yeah.
So
It's all your fault. No, I'm just
all my
kidding.
fault.
Just kidding. No, well, and I'm not surprised, right, with Jess because she was never afraid to just go straight into a catcher
Yeah.
during her day. I feel like there are plenty of photos from like the Olympics of her just going like boom right into it.
But such a good athlete, though.
Yeah, competitive. It's like a league of their own,
Yeah.
right? Like, but you're not going to drop it like Dottie did at the
Yeah.
end.
Drop it.
Uh, yeah, no, but it's just so interesting, right? Because it's become a big part of the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But you have to
It,
let him play. I feel like
yeah.
that's like you're saying. What are you supposed to do at the World Series? Not catch the ball and make the tag?
Right. Adrenaline's pumping. You don't really know. Sometimes I just black out.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think, was there an obstruction call at the World Series this year? Because for some reason, I thought there was.
I feel like there was the potential. I remember there was some discussion at
Okay.
home plate, and like I think it wasn't called obstruction, but some people were like, "Oh, that was," and they had to review it, sort of thing.
Right.
But nothing as like blatant as some of the other things we saw throughout the season.
Okay. Yeah. I was trying to remember. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's good.
yeah, it is good. You're right. All right, that was the first one. Obviously, gave you the hardest one first. Maybe we'll see. The next one is conference realignment.
Hmm.
Safer out.
Gosh, why are you giving me the tough
I
ones?
know. I don't know why I said that was the hardest one because they're all hard, but
Oh Man, conference realignment. I'm gonna go safe. I'm gonna go safe just because I think it's just a new opportunity. I think, it is what it is, and who knows what goes on behind the scenes and why they're doing it. But I think, you can't really change it. So
Yeah.
I think it's just a new opportunity, and I'm kind of excited to see how it's gonna pan out. Obviously, there's going to be some struggles for sure, but it's just an adjustment, and I think either way, it's hopefully it's gonna help our sport. So I'm gonna go safe.
Yeah. There are like different ways you can take it, right? It's like, are we going to dwell on frustration about it, or are we going to just try to attack this and make it the best we can?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah. I mean, again, like there's two perspectives on it. Obviously, I'm sad to see the Pac-12 go,
right.
but again, like we can't really change it. So
Yeah,
the only thing that we can do is hopefully just keep going at it day by day and see how it aligns. The only thing is the travel. I
yeah,
think that that's going to be very tough for. Yeah, I think it's one thing that they have to remember is that they are student athletes, so they are in school, and so the travel might be a little bit difficult. And
yeah,
I mean, even when we were in the pack, like that was difficult, and now
yeah,
they're going to be traveling even further, and um, that's the only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about. But again, like we can't really do anything about it. So it's just an adjustment and hopefully it works out well. And, I guess time will only tell.
yeah.
So
I agree with you. Just support for the athletes, number
yeah,
one, throughout
yeah,
all that. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. That was the second one. The
Okay.
last one, last one is bat flips. Safe
Oh,
route.
oh man. I'm out. I'm out on those just because I think there's a certain respect for the game. Again, you can go about it two different ways. Adrenaline's pumping,
Hmm.
right? Like that also shows like your energy if you do flip the bat. I love it at that perspective. But I think there is a certain respect. Like you can do a bat flip, but not like outrageously crazy bat flips, Like, but to each their own, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, there's these are so hard. Why are you giving me the hard ones? Like I
Well,
can
and
go both ways.
it's like your opinion though, right? Like just because
Yeah.
you're like I'm out on bat flips,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you're judging other people if they are safe on it, right? It's
Right.
just like this is your style.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've never bat flipped. Again, I wasn't like a home run hitter at all. So didn't really have the opportunity to do that. But yeah, I just think I respect the game, and not saying that people who bat flip don't respect the game, but I think like my style, I couldn't do it. I don't think, just because, as a catcher, like I have so much respect for pitchers and I know how hard they work. So that's just where I'm coming from. But,
Yeah.
I see it all the time in baseball. I mean, you see it in softball sometimes, and I love the energy. I think it's part of the game too, So to each their own.
Yeah.
I support it.
Yeah. But the catchers being protective of their pitchers totally makes sense. I feel like
Yeah.
even times where if a catcher has said, I'm safe on bat flips," I'll be
Yeah.
like, "What if someone did it to your pitcher?" And they're like, "Oh no, no,
Nope.
no."
Nope.
And I'm like, "Right, makes sense."
Yeah. No, no.
Yeah. Like, could you imagine if someone did that to Rachel at the World Series when you
No.
played? Right? Like,
Yeah. See, I don't see, yeah, if that were to happen, I would definitely be very protective,
yeah,
and maybe throw it back to first base a couple times, or, if they were to get on after that, I think, yeah, no, it's protectiveness for sure.
yeah. Very fair. Well, thank you, Paige. I'm glad we could reunite so quickly after the World Series, even if it's, virtually instead of in person. But
Yeah.
this was really fun. So thanks again for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and, those were tough questions, so next time, make them easier.
Yeah. You killed it, though. I thought you did great. It was fun to check in with Paige. It hasn't been long since I've seen her, but it was go, go, go for us when we were covering all the different stories at the Women's College World Series. So it's kind of nice to slow down a bit, just take a breath, and talk about her story for a little bit. So, with that, let's transition to the foul tip of the week. This week's foul tip is about taking care of our opportunities. I actually heard a travel ball player say this recently. And I like the way that it was phrased because I think a lot of us say, take advantage of your opportunities, which seems pretty straightforward, but sometimes I wonder if that makes us think too much about the outcome, almost like it only counts as taking advantage if the outcome is successful. Otherwise, you didn't actually take advantage of that opportunity. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you gain an advantage, in quote unquote, by getting better. And you can get better by learning and getting experience. You can still learn and get that experience, even if the outcome isn't considered a success on paper. That's why we talk about all the time learning from failure and letting failure help you get better. So when I heard the phrase slightly tweaked a little bit to be take care of opportunities, I liked that because taking care of something means you invest in it, right? Your time, your effort, everything like that. But it also requires us to recognize opportunities when we have them. Some are so obvious, right? Any game is an opportunity, any at bat, a play, any practice, any rep, that sort of thing. But others may be less obvious, especially on the mental side. Challenges can be opportunities. Last minute changes, forcing us to make adjustments. Viewing moments like that as an opportunity versus something else changes the game. I'll give you an example. So I did sideline reporting, as I've mentioned, for the TV broadcast at the Pac-12 softball tournament this season. UCLA's Caitlin Terry, she was just a freshman, going to be a sophomore now, but a freshman at the time, had thrown 3 straight complete games against ASU just the previous weekend. She got the start again against them at the tournament less than a week later. So I asked the head coach, Kelly Inouye Perez, another friend of the show, what made you make that decision? 4 games in a row, right? And she said Coach Lisa, of course, the GOAT, Lisa Fernandez, wanted to see how tough KT was. Could she handle it mentally, let alone physically? It was an opportunity to find out. And they did. She beat them for the 4th time in a row. And they went on to actually win the tournament championship, of course. But that challenge was an opportunity. And it's also hard, obviously, not to answer the call from the GOAT. But you can even create an opportunity that didn't necessarily exist before. It's simple as, hey, coach, I want to get some extra hitting reps in before practice. Will you meet me early to throw me front toss? It's creating an opportunity for yourself. And this is way beyond softball for this. This is everyday life and work, relationships, everything. It can be as little as saying hello to somebody. That can be an opportunity. Nothing might come of it, or something unexpected could. You just don't know. It is an opportunity. Now, for my fellow introverts, I'm not saying that you have to say hello to strangers. I get it. That's not our forte necessarily, but just showing how simple an opportunity can be. Nothing is guaranteed in an opportunity. It just means that we have a shot. And don't we want to take care of that? So that's it. Take care of your opportunities. That's the foul tip of the week. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, part of Bleav Network and presented by Bet Online. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, wherever you listen, including Bleav.com and YouTube too. Subscribe to the show, rate the show, and if you liked it, write a review for it. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bleav in Softball. Again, that's BLEAV. You can reach out to me personally on Twitter at Jenna Becerra01 and Instagram at Jenna Becerra as well. As always, thank you for tuning in and catch you soon.